Coming up on our newscast, U.S. President Joe Biden is visiting South Korea on Friday. In the first Seoul-Washington summit since the launch of the Yoon administration, likely topics include economic security and Asia-Pacific region cooperation. A state memorial ceremony is held to mark the May 18th pro-democracy movement. President Yoon and the members of his party went to pay their respects, a rare move by conservative politicians. North Korea's leader reprimanded officials over the regime's virus response. While the number of COVID-19 cases continue to rise, the North appears to have no plan to accept support from Seoul. Hello and welcome. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. U.S. President Joe Biden will be arriving in South Korea on Friday afternoon. Itinerary for the three-day visit includes the first summit with President Yoon, as well as a possible tour of a Samsung semiconductor plant. Kim Da-mi starts us off.
U.S. President Joe Biden kicks off his first trip to this part of the region here in South Korea as he lands late Friday afternoon for an official visit. After arriving late Friday afternoon, U.S. President Joe Biden will kick off his first visit to South Korea in the form of an official visit. His bilateral summit with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol is slated for Saturday at the new presidential office in Yongsan between 1:30 and 2 p.m. Korea time, following Mr. Biden's visit to the Seoul National Cemetery to pay tribute to the fallen heroes. Seoul's top office says the two leaders will sit down for their first bilateral for roughly 90 minutes, during which the two sides are expected to discuss issues ranging from Korean Peninsula affairs, economic security and cooperation, as well as global challenges.
We anticipate the summit will include new South Korea-U.S. alliance in the realm of technology. We will promote close policy and information coordination based on common values and mutual benefits.
The summit will then lead to a 50-minute joint press conference by the two presidents, which will be followed by a Q&A session from the press. Later in the evening, President Yoon will host a dinner banquet for his U.S. counterpart at the National Museum of Korea, with about 50 people from various fields ranging from heads of conglomerates to key figures in culture and sports from the Korean side and 30 from the American side. In fact, sources say the first thing on Mr. Biden's itinerary in South Korea is a tour of a Samsung Electronics semiconductor plant in Pyeongtaek upon arrival on Friday, the first such a visit by a U.S. president. Speculation is running high that President Yoon may accompany President Biden in this tour, as the two allies place much gravity on beefing up economic security cooperation. Although the fine details of Biden's Seoul visit are not immediately known for security reasons, the presidential office noted that the two leaders will see each other at least once to take part in an event together for all 3 days of Mr. Biden's stay in South Korea. U.S. President Biden will leave for Japan, the second leg of his Northeast Asia tour, early Sunday afternoon for a 3-day visit there. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
President Biden's trip to Asia will see the launch of a new U.S.-led economic pact known as the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. South Korea is set to formally announce its intention to join during this weekend's summit. Min Suk-yeol provides a glimpse of what to expect.
South Korea has decided to join the U.S.-led Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which will be launched during President Biden's upcoming visit to Japan. According to South Korea's presidential office on Wednesday, President Yoon Suk-yeol will virtually attend next Tuesday's launching event. Upon taking office, Yoon has shown strong support and willingness to take part in the economic framework that seeks to build strong ties and supply chains in the Asia-Pacific region. It's likely that Yoon will formally announce South Korea's participation during his first summit with President Biden this Saturday. U.S. President Joe Biden is scheduled to visit Seoul from May 20th to the 22nd, followed by a trip to Tokyo until the 24th. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is expected to announce Tokyo's participation in the IPEF while meeting Biden next Monday. The two are also expected to discuss ways to strengthen cooperation to ensure stability in the Taiwan Strait, as well as share their concerns over the Ukraine crisis. Biden's visit to Asia this week is expected to coincide with the formal launch of the IPEF. U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo said on Tuesday that Biden will formally announce the launch of the economic pact during his trip to Japan. She said that Washington was extremely enthusiastic about the initiative and pointed out that there is significant demand from countries in the Indo-Pacific region that want the U.S. to be more present and to have an affirmative economic strategy. The IPEF is aimed at strengthening cooperation between the U.S. and its partners in the region on issues such as trade, clean energy, and supply chain networks. The framework is widely viewed as being part of Washington's efforts to counter China's growing influence in the Asia-Pacific region. To be launched next week, the U.S.-led economic pact is set to be joined by South Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, and potentially by several other members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Min Suk-yeol, Arirang News.
Despite a massive COVID-19 outbreak, North Korea is reportedly preparing to conduct an ICBM test in time for President Biden's visit to the region. Seoul's top office emphasized there is a separate plan to bolster defensive posture in case of a provocation during the period. Bae-eun-ji explains further.
A senior official from the South Korea's presidential office says that North Korea appears to be getting ready to launch an intercontinental ballistic missile. The first deputy chief of the Presidential National Security Office, Kim Tae-hyo, told reporters on Wednesday that the possibility of North Korea conducting a nuclear test by this weekend is relatively low, but preparations for an ICBM launch are believed to be imminent. He added that if there's a provocation from the North during Biden's visit, they have a plan B, which would secure the readiness posture of the combined U.S. and South Korean military forces, even if it requires changing the summit schedule. This comes hours after CNN, citing an unnamed U.S. official, reported that North Korea appears to be preparing for a possible ICBM test within the next 2 to 3 days. The North also appears to be continuing efforts to prepare for a nuclear test at its Punggye nuclear facility. A U.S.-based think tank, CSIS, said continued activity outside and around a new portal for one of the tunnels was observed in satellite images on Tuesday. It said the satellite images showed both the original portal that was destroyed in 2018 and the new portal under construction near tunnel number 3. The think tank also said a probable compressor and pump house building is located around 45 meters from the new portal, and that several cables, most likely for power, run straight from the building into the tunnel. An expert says the cables leading to the tunnel does mean that the North is preparing for a nuclear test, but it also means that the test will not be carried out right away.
The cables are installed to light up the tunnel or to operate ventilation systems. When the cables are removed and a shield is installed, that's when it's ready for a nuclear test. But for now, because the cables are still there, we can tell that the preparations are still underway.
Meanwhile, U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said there aren't any expectations that North Korea will put its nuclear test on hold because of the COVID-19 outbreak, as the regime never prioritizes the humanitarian concerns of its own people over what he referred to as destabilizing programs. The remarks come as the State Department earlier assessed that the North may conduct a nuclear test as early as this month. Bae-eun-ji, Arirang News.
North Korea's leader reprimanded officials over COVID-19 responses. Even though the number of cases spike, the regime appears to have no plans to accept help from Seoul, instead turning to Russia and China. Han Sung-woo has the latest.
Kim Jong-un is not happy about the way North Korean officials have been responding to the so-called fever of an unknown cause. In a Politburo meeting on Tuesday, Kim denounced top officials, saying their poor response to the crisis from its early stages has exposed holes in the system, and he called for them to redouble their efforts in restoring stability to people's lives. That's according to North Korean state media, which also reported on Wednesday another 230,000 new cases of the fever and 6 more deaths, raising the total number of cases so far to over 1.7 million and the death toll to 62. The daily number's been on a downward trend the past few days, though, which is perhaps why the meeting was held without masks and why officials there said circumstances were improving. Still, the regime seems to be reaching out for help from overseas. Russia's foreign ministry said in a statement Wednesday that the North's ambassador to Russia, Shin Hong-chul, met on Tuesday in Moscow with Russia's deputy foreign minister, Igor Morgulov, to discuss bilateral issues and the COVID-19 outbreak. It's believed that may have included ways Russia can provide aid. Reportedly, North Korea has already imported millions of masks from China this year. Citing data from China's customs agency, Voice of America said Wednesday that the regime has also imported a considerable amount of medicine, including some $310,000 worth of unspecified vaccines, which may or may not be for COVID-19. But the regime has still not responded to Seoul's attempt on Monday to propose working-level talks about COVID-19 relief, even though the two sides are still holding their routine phone calls via the Inter-Korean hotline. The World Health Organization, meanwhile, has expressed concern that new variants could emerge because of the high levels of unchecked transmission of the virus among unvaccinated people, such as in North Korea. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
President Yoon attended a ceremony commemorating the May 18th pro-democracy movement. During the event in Gwangju, he delivered a speech focusing on unity and integration. Yoon sheds light on the conservative leader's remarks and gestures.
Led by a conservative president, his aides, his cabinet, and the entire ruling conservative party were aboard South Korea's KTX bullet train Wednesday morning, heading to the nation's southwestern city of Gwangju to pay tribute to those who perished during the May 18 pro-democracy movement in 1980. It was a scene not seen before for a conservative government. At the ceremony marking 42 years since the bloody crackdown on civilians by the then military junta led by late ex-President Chun Do-han, President Yoon offered his deepest condolences to those who lost their lives during the movement and their families, adding the entire nation remembers the May resistance in which they fought for liberal democracy and the value of human rights with blood.
5월 정신은 보편적 가치의 회복이고 자유민주주의 헌법 정신 그 자체입니다. 그 정신은 우리 모두의 것이고 대한민국의 귀중한 자산입니다.
Visiting the word freedom or liberal 12 times throughout his 6-minute-long speech, the new South Korean leader referred to the May 18th spirit as a living history that should be passed down for generations and spread throughout the world.
자유민주주의와 인권의 가치는 우리 국민을 하나로 묶는 통합의 철학입니다. 그러므로 자유민주주의를 피로써 지켜낸 5월의 정신은 바로 국민 통합의 주춧돌입니다.
And for the first time ever for a conservative president, Mr. Yoon, hand in hand with the bereaved families, sang out loud, "Marching for Our Beloved," a song dedicated to those who perished during the pro-democracy movement in Gwangju on May 18, 1980. Clearly, the new conservative president's efforts to close the regional divide in South Korea and redefine the pro-democracy spirit of 42 years ago as that of all South Korean people.
자유와 정의 그리고 진실을 사랑하는 우리 대한민국 국민 모두는 광주 시민입니다.
윤정민, 아리랑 뉴스.
President Yoon's latest actions come as a surprise to Gwangju citizens, as conservative politicians rarely make such moves. So how deeply ingrained are the memories of the events that unfolded in 1980 into the hearts of many whose lives are adversely impacted by it? Kim Do-yeon went to hear directly from the people.
70-year-old Kim Sa-ik and 65-year-old Yang Jung-gan both lost younger brothers during the May 18 pro-democracy movement military crackdowns. On this 42nd anniversary, they're here at Gwangju May 18 National Cemetery, where their brothers were laid to rest.
I was scared, so I was kind of in the back. Now my brother is dead and I am forever ashamed. I have been ashamed to be alive for the past 42 years.
Until now, conservative politicians have been accused of showing less compassion for the deceased and their relatives. That's why President Yoon Suk-yeol's decision to sing along to the Marching for Our Beloved, while also calling on his party's lawmakers to come down with him, is all the more significant.
However the conservatives were before, the fact that he said Gwangju led the foundation for the whole country's democracy was good. I didn't support Yoon. In fact, I opposed him. But what he did today has a lot of meaning.
Yang is not the only one that opposed President Yoon. The city as a whole has never voted for a conservative president in the history of South Korea's direct elections since 1987. In fact, Yoon just had 12% of the votes in Gwangju during the last election, and that was a record high for a conservative candidate. Hence, some remain skeptical.
The Conservatives have to repent. They didn't have to come to Gwangju today.
On the other hand, his speech certainly underscored the importance of the historical event, but the citizens of Gwangju and relatives of the victims want more tangible action.
Maybe soon the May 18 pro-democracy movement can be added to the country's constitution. That would lift a lot of weight off of the deceased relatives.
This hopefully can be a constant reminder to South Koreans about the dark history. But for the citizens of Gwangju, it's never forgotten. At the city center where civilians held their ground until their deaths, the memories are preserved. From bullet holes to daily alarms at 5:18 p.m. that plays the marching for our beloved melody. Behind me are nearly 250 bullet holes from the last days of the military crackdown on the May 18 pro-democracy movement. The country spent decades just to come to a consensus that these holes are caused by helicopter gunshots. The sooner more of these truths come out, the sooner families of the victims can find peace. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Gwangju.
South Korea reported 31,352 new COVID-19 infections. The second straight day, the tally stood at little over 30,000. It was the lowest figure for a Wednesday in 15 weeks. Amid the overall decline, according to Statistics Korea, more people are out and about. The data was compiled using GPS signals from cell phones to determine whether people spend 30 minutes or more at a place away from home. In the third week since authorities eased almost all distancing measures, outdoor activities were higher than what was recorded during the same period in 2019. Many people travel across the country from May 2nd to the 8th to celebrate Children's Day and Parents' Day. With the mask mandate lifted, it's taking some getting used to. For Korea's beauty industry, this is a welcome development as people are going back to their makeup regimens. Lee Dae-yeon zooms in on this phenomenon.
A new word appeared in conversations in South Korea during pandemic. The word magikun, meaning mask fraud, refers to the difference between a person's looks with and without a mask. The word even made it to the Guardian newspaper in relation to masks being able to hide the unfortunate parts of people's faces.
I've heard the word magikun before. It's that confusion you get when you see a colleague with their mask off and find them unfamiliar.
One of my colleagues who had interviewed someone for a job said he didn't recognize the new employee because he looked different with his mask off.
But with the recent lifting of the outdoor mask mandate, this mask fraud phenomenon more likely to become a thing of the past. Instead, some people are refocusing on their beauty with makeup.
I'm wearing a new type of makeup which highlights the eyes. Before the pandemic, people wore full makeup as all of their faces could be seen. But since the outbreak of COVID-19, makeup trends have been shifting.
And now the lifting of the outdoor mask mandate will lead to another change in makeup trends.
Wearing masks made people focus more on their eyes, so the demand for cosmetics like mascara and eyeliner soared during the pandemic. But now with people taking off their masks, makeup based on a personal color to boost the best parts of their faces is gaining attention.
Sales of cosmetics are seeing a rapid rise. Data released by major department stores show that sales of cosmetic products at Lotte department stores increased 20%, with Hyundai and Shinsegae each seeing 25% increases in April compared to the same period last year. The government's lifting of social gathering limits and mask mandates has largely driven the sales rise. Some e-commerce platforms are also trying to expand beauty-related sectors. One e-commerce platform is running an online beauty class where consumers can learn makeup tips and get recommendations for cosmetic products.
During the pandemic, testing cosmetic products was not allowed at offline stores. So we decided to open a live beauty class where show hosts could try out and review new products while answering viewers' questions regarding the product.
She added, with the weather becoming hotter and outdoor activities without mask wearing increasing, sales of cosmetics like sunscreen, lip products, and perfumes are expected to rise. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
Japan's nuclear regulator granted initial approval for a plan to release contaminated water from the Fukushima plant into the sea, a move that's likely to raise objections from neighboring countries, including South Korea. The Nuclear Regulation Authority gave the green light on Wednesday, saying there are no safety issues. The plan would have TEPCO filter the contaminated water, leaving only the radioactive element tritium. It will then dilute the water until tritium levels fall to less than 1/40th of regulatory limits before releasing it into the ocean. Last year, Tokyo's government decided to release over 1 million tons of Fukushima water starting around spring of 2023. In response, South Korea's foreign ministry vowed to monitor the plan with the IAEA. Around 700 Ukrainian soldiers have reportedly surrendered from the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol within the last 24 hours. Russia's Ministry of Defense made this statement on Wednesday. It means that 959 people from the steelworks have surrendered. Moscow's claim contradicts Ukraine's reported number of around 250. Ukrainian officials are yet to comment. The Russian Defense Ministry says the last of the Ukrainian forces leaders remain in the plant, refusing to give in. Sweden and Finland formally applied to join NATO, breaking decades of neutrality over the Ukraine crisis. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he doesn't see it as a threat, but membership for the two sides could be delayed by opposition from Turkey. Kim Yongsan brings the updates.
Sweden and Finland have handed in their formal applications to join NATO. On Wednesday morning local time, the two countries' envoys delivered their applications to NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg.
The applications you have made today are an historic step. Allies will now consider the next steps on their path to NATO.
The two Nordic countries have been neutral for decades, but they've changed their stance because of the threat to European security posed by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Public opinion in both countries have swung heavily in favor now of breaking with neutrality and fortifying Europe's defenses.
It's a message of strength and a clear signal that we stand united going into the future ahead.
If both countries are admitted, it would mark the biggest NATO expansion in decades, increasing its membership to 32 countries. Finland's border with Russia, 1,300 kilometers long, would be the longest single land border between Russia and the NATO allies. The process of joining NATO can take up to a year because of the need for ratification by all 30 of NATO's existing members. But Sweden and Finland could face more obstacles, with Turkey recently expressing a reluctance to admit them due to what it says is their refusal to deal with Kurdish militants. But Secretary General Stoltenberg made clear on Wednesday that NATO will move to resolve all outstanding issues and reach a conclusion quickly. Kim Yongsan, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, South Koreans see AI as the main technology that will change the country's future. An online survey was conducted by the Korean Intellectual Property Office ahead of Korea's Invention Day, observed on May 19th. Among some 700 respondents, AI was chosen by 15.1%. The runner-up tech are robots. Number 3 was high-tech, eco-friendly cars. AI is one of the sectors the Yoon administration has pledged to provide greater support.
The stretch of unseasonable heat will continue across South Korea. The only difference for tomorrow's weather will be more clouds for the daytime. Southern regions will see relatively hotter spells with maximum temperatures hovering near 30 degrees Celsius. In terms of the air quality, the Seoul metropolitan area will see high concentrations of fine dust. And various alerts are issued across the nation tonight. Dry weather advisories are in place for southern regions and the East Coast. Both alerts for strong winds and dry weather are issued across eastern Gangwon-do province. The combination of gusty winds and dry air raises the risk of wildfires, so please take extra precautions. Morning lows in Seoul and Daejeon will start off at 15 degrees. And we'll see a mix of clouds and sunshine for the daytime. Seoul will get up to 26 degrees, Gwangju 27, Busan and Jeju will be reaching 25 degrees. Dry conditions will persist for the time being, and temperatures will keep rising until the beginning of next week. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.